time, so I think we could get started whenever you think it's appropriate.
All right, thank you, Todd. Well, good morning all, and welcome to the first BRTB meeting of the year. And it's in person. It's good to see everybody here. Just for reference, this meeting is being recorded. If anyone online should experience difficulties during this meeting, please send a message in the chat box. If you are not here in person, then I ask that any BRTB members joining online turn on their cameras during the roll call for attendance as well as for voting. This way, the public is clear about the BRTB membership. And now I ask Ms. Rebecca DeBell to start the roll call to determine member participation. Rebecca?
Annapolis,
Here.
Anne Arundel County,
Present.
Baltimore City,
Here.
Baltimore County,
Here.
Carroll County, Hartford County.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Thanks. Howard County,
Here.
Queen Anne's County,
Here.
MDOT,
Here.
RTA of Central Maryland,
Here.
MDOT, MTA, Maryland Department of Environment, Maryland Department of Planning,
Here.
FHWA.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, our first item is the approval of minutes from our December BRTB meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. I think it was Sam for the first. And Steve for the second. Are there any edits from the members? All right, we'll now vote for approval on the minutes. When your name is read, please indicate A or nay. Rebecca, can you call the roll?
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County, Hartford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
and RTA of Central Maryland.
Aye.
Thanks.
All right, the minutes are approved. We'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is the public participation opportunity, where we offer the public a chance to speak to the board. If anyone has comments on any of the action items, please wait for that item to be discussed. If there is anyone who wishes to address the board at this time, please indicate so in the chat box. Do you see anyone?
Currently, Madam Chair, there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box. So I'm looking to the audience. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the BRTB from the audience? Chair, I don't believe we have anyone asking to speak to the BRTB.
All right, so we now ask for the report on public involvement activity from Ms. Regina.
Monica, are you able to do it?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Sorry.
Sure. Sorry.
Good morning. So the first item that we have a couple of opportunities for the public to help us weigh in on a few opportunities. The first one is to help us to design the Patapsco Regional Greenway Stony Run Trail. And we're back at it again. Last month, we wrapped up a comment period on the Guinness to Southwest Area Park Trail. And last week, we just launched a planning process for another section of the Patapsco Regional Greenway in Anne Arundel and Howard counties. So we're eager to hear from the community about the Stony Run Trail, which is going to add another 4 miles to the Greenway. And before we start to plan, we're trying to hear from the public what the community would like. We want to know what their thoughts are, what features they would like on this part of the trail, any worries that are on people's minds, and find out what suggestions they have to make this trail beneficial for everyone. So we're going to be having a community meeting to talk about people's thoughts and ideas. And we're going to be at the Elkridge branch of the Howard County Library System in Elkridge on Tuesday, February 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. And folks who are interested can learn more at publicinput.com/PRG. That's where we have project information and where people can find out all the different ways that they can share their thoughts. Coming up, we wanted to let folks know that we have a comment period on what's coming up next. Every year we come up with a list of the work that we're going to do and what our planning priorities are. These ideas come from local elected officials and the staff in each jurisdiction through our committee process, as well as community members through our transportation core. And think of it like a roadmap for transportation planning. In it, you'll find where we plan to put our money and resources for things like studies, collecting data, reaching out to the public, and other projects related to planning and improving transportation. Some of you may know it as the document known as the Unified Planning Work Program. We are trying to come up with a flashier name for the public to help them understand what we're doing. So stay tuned for February 7th when we're going to release our plans for the coming fiscal year and ask for your feedback. Details are going to be posted on Balto Metro and our social media. And just one other quick announcement. Every month we publish an e-newsletter called Be More Involved, and it's about all the different ways that the public can be involved in planning activities around the region. So if you have any announcements for the February issue, please email me. My email is mhainesbenkeda@baltometro.org, MHAINESBENKHEDDA@baltometro.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. We appreciate it. We will now ask for a report from the technical committee. Mr. Dan Jamison, please present the report. Dan?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Dan Janicek here from MDOT. Yeah, the tech committee reviewed and approved, the 4 resolutions before the board today. Resolution 2410, Ms. Cindy Birch shared the regional safety performance measure targets for fatalities, fatality rate per vehicle mile traveled, serious injuries, and serious injury rate per vehicle mile traveled, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries for resolution 2410. In 2022, traffic crashes related fatalities, serious injuries, and non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries decreased in the Baltimore region, while the state saw increases in fatalities. The MDOT SHA submitted state safety performance targets in August 23, and we've got some new targets that came out in December, and the BRTB must set regional targets within 180 days of that report. This will be the 7th time targets were set, and the BRTB previously decided to utilize the state methodology for setting targets, which remain the same as last year. We also reviewed Resolution 2411. Ms. Erin Bolton updated the committee on the process for creating the Federal Highway Administration's adjusted urban areas. Federal Highway Administration asks the DOTs to coordinate with local jurisdictions and the MPOs to create those adjusted urban boundaries. The general guidelines that are they must encompass the full urban areas that's defined by the 2020 census, but should also be expanded as needed in order to align with existing planning boundaries, address irregularities in the boundary shapes, and maintain consistency with the highway functional classification system. So the urban rule designation can impact funding for federal aid highway system, specifically minor collectors. Functional classifications are eligible if urban, but not eligible if rural. Anyway, gave a positive report on that. We also, Mr. Keith Kucharek reviewed the background information for Resolution 2412 on how the first 25 miles of critical urban freight corridors were established. The FAST Act established the National Highway Freight Network in 2016. This provided a mechanism for additional federal funding for freight corridors. The critical urban freight corridor is a subsystem of the National Highway, of the National Highway Freight Network. Of course, the board, the tech committee offered a motion and supported, and the members approved the proposed segments, which you'll see. Also, Resolution 2413, Mr. Darren Bean of M.SHA indicated that Anne Arundel County has requested a change of functional classification of several US 50 service roads from local road to minor collector. The members approved the request to change to the functional classification. We also received an update on the Unified Planning Work Program at the board, which will be coming to the board soon. The proposed projects, we got a nice overview of that. And also we got an update on the congestion management system process by Ms. Eileen Singleton. And that, I guess that concludes my my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. We will now ask for a report from our interagency consultation group. Ms. Ann Marshall, can you please present your report, Ann? Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Anna Marshall. So the ICG met on January 3rd, 2024 to begin the conformity process for the 2025 to 2028 TIP. And the previous meeting was in July, and since then the TIP, LRTP, and associated conformity determination document were approved by federal partners in the fall of 2023. ICG discussed the draft methodology and assumptions letter, which details the testing methods and emission budgets to be used for conformity. The Baltimore region is currently designated as a moderate non-attainment area for the 2015 ozone standard. And the 2023 motor vehicle emission budgets were deemed adequate for use by the EPA on August 18th, 2023. And were included in the 2015 8-hour ozone state implementation plan. We also heard a presentation from Tim Shepard from MDE about the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation. And this was recently adopted by Maryland on December 25th, 2023. The ACT requires a growing percentage of medium and heavy duty vehicles sold to be zero emission vehicles, starting with model year 2026. And this will ultimately help to reduce on-road NOx emissions. The next meeting is going to be on February 7th, and the methodology letter will be voted on for approval. And we'll also hear about the greenhouse gas performance measure, which is a new measure through FHWA's Transportation Performance Management Program. Additionally, I have a request. So we are launching the project called Electric Vehicle Community Charging Hubs for multi-unit dwellings in the Baltimore region. And BMC is looking for key stakeholders in local and from local and state agencies to join the steering committee. In many cases, people live in housing that might not have a private driveway or garage, and that provides a barrier to EV ownership. So the consultant will work with BMC and the steering committee to help provide guidance to jurisdictions to best serve their constituents who live in high density residential areas to provide EV charging opportunities. And so I'm just asking members to work with your technical committee members as well, and any recommendations you have for steering committee members in like zoning, local zoning office or sustainability offices, and who have knowledge about electric vehicles or are just interested in being on the steering committee. And we'll have 3 meetings for the steering committee, and in April, July, and November is the anticipated time. And we'll also have 4 focus area meetings to go into more detail about electric vehicle charging needs. And those are anticipated to be in May, June, July, and August. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we would like to recognize one of our board members. We were hoping that he'd be able to make it into the room in time, but the interagency consultation group also includes a representative of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. This is normally a volunteer position to show up at these meetings. Normally ask them to serve 2 years, but Alex Rawls has served for 5 years on this program. So we have paroled him off of the ICG, and we have another volunteer. Brian Ulrich from Anne Arundel County is going to now serve hopefully for the next 2 years, and then we'll have another volunteer. But Once Alex gets in, hopefully we can thank him for his service on behalf of the BRTB.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, we will go to the consideration of the resolutions. So we'll now move to our action items. Todd, can you please introduce the first action item?
Yes. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider resolution 24-10 to endorse updated highway safety performance targets. I'm now going to ask Ms. Cindy Birch to introduce the resolution. Cindy?
Morning, everyone. First meeting of the year, so we talk safety targets. And thank you, Dan. You gave about half of my presentation with your technical committee report out. I appreciate that. Obviously, as always, the slides will be available, so don't worry about all the million numbers I'm about to throw at you. But so here's the last 5 years of fully closed out data. While we are in 2024, they're still closing out last year's crash data. So we're using data from 2018 to 2020 to look at trends and to also set these targets. So you can see on the very top row, our fatalities went down in the region, which is good because we have that pandemic spike from 2020. So we are still working our way down. The state saw a slight increase, and that number for 2022, it was just a little bit. We've all heard the news that it was worse last year, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But so even as the state was about level or went up a few, we were coming down. And here it is just graphically. So we're not coming down a lot, but we are on the decrease in the blue line at the bottom for the BRTB region, and the state is the red line. So that's fatalities, serious injuries. Both of us showed a decrease in that. Again, that's denoted on the crash report. So it's law enforcement impression of what is a serious injury. So it's usually just incapacitating or disabling injuries. And then the other performance measure, these are all in the federal transportation regulations we have to answer to that Dan mentioned. You can see here, non-motorists, they put together their fatalities and serious injuries. So these are your pedestrians, your bicyclists. You can see in the region, we actually went down quite a bit from 367 to 313. So we went down almost 20%. Then the state went up slightly. So the question we had many years ago, which was a great question, was what does this actually mean since they're both lumped together? So the yellow bar are the fatalities. So you can see we had a 10% drop from 70 to 63 in our pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities in the region. And our serious injuries came down from 297 to 250. So that's how we had that huge drop overall. But it is nice to tease these out because while we want the whole number to come down, we definitely want those fatality numbers to come down. And just for a little bit of perspective, as it relates to the state over the past 3 years, and these numbers hold true for many moons, we're a little over half of the crashes happen in our region, a little over half of the serious injuries and total injuries, but only 41% of the fatalities happen here. So you might expect we have 52% of the crashes, we'd have over 50% of the fatalities, but we don't. So that's a good thing. We're underrepresented on that as far as the state. We also have 46% of the VMT across the state over those 3 years. So as Dan mentioned, this is federal regulation. We have 180 days after the state highway safety improvement program report goes in, which is the end of August. And this will be 6th year, I guess, because it all started back in January 2018. And I believe this is the only performance measure we have to do every year. You get a break on the other ones. They're every 2 or 3 years. In the past, you, the board, have agreed to adopt the Maryland methodology to be in alignment with their highway safety improvement plan, highway safety plan, and strategic highway safety plan, all of those letters, which is taking an exponential forecast all the way back from a base year of 2005 to 2009. There are 5-year rolling averages, that's in the federal regs, so that's what our data points are. And what the state also does is in the cases of increasing, we don't want to project more fatalities or serious injuries, they would apply a 2% reduction to that. So there's always a positive target, always a reduction in what we're doing. So doing all that fancy math, and many thanks to the State Highway Administration, the Highway Safety Office. They've come up with some targets for the region. And that's what's presented here. So using that exponential trend, 05 to 09, everything I just said, you can see the second and third column are actual numbers in the region for 21 and 22. You can see we have green reductions. We went down in every category between those 2 years, which is great. And the proposed targets for your consideration are, hey, you made it. You got a big kudos. We'll let Todd do it again.
Big announcement, right?
Yeah. The 2020 to 2024 target, again, it's a 5-year average because those are the data points. So you can see those there in the next to last column. At the end is our 2030 goal. Highlighted in yellow is number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries because our 2022 number is already lower than what our target will be. That's because of the 5-year averages and all of that that's in there. But we've already beat that target, and we can just keep going down. We do recognize that Maryland is a Vision Zero state by legislation. And our vision is still zero. We do align with that. The state, SHSP, all of the plans I mentioned, they also, the vision is always to get to zero. We just want these interim targets and even a 2030 goal to be a little more realistic because our numbers are big enough. We don't want to say we're going from 200 to zero. We want these measures in between. So just wanted to say, because it's Vision Zero by 2030 in state law, and that is still our vision, but these are our goals to still try to get there. Just as a little bit of reference, here's the same table, but for the state. So the state saw that slight increase in fatalities and the slight increase in their non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. That's just for reference. Now, to see each one of you individually, looking at the data, if it's easy to see, what's in green is good. Those are reductions from 2021 to 2022. So Anne Arundel was doing great with their serious injuries. They did have a uptick in fatalities, but their serious injuries are coming down. Baltimore City did great on all of the categories between 21 and 22. They came down. I have the VMTs up there for reference too, so you can see how you've rebounded since the pandemic. Baltimore County did well with their fatalities came down. Carroll County, their non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries. And again, you can have these slides if you want these numbers for yourself. Harford County didn't necessarily come down, but they also didn't go up too drastically, just a little bit with their serious injuries and their non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries. Howard County came down in all 5 categories. And Queen Anne's County did a great job with their serious injuries coming down. Their fatalities didn't go up or down. And now post-resolution, this is looking at 2023 data from the state fatal crash dashboard, updated it yesterday. So you can see for last year for 2023 so far, there's still some reports that could potentially come in. Baltimore County had a significant increase in the number of fatalities. That does include the unfortunate 6 fatalities on the Baltimore Beltway we suffered. Carroll County went up, as did Harford, and Queen Anne's had a jump. I'm not familiar if you had a big crash like that had multiples or if they're one-offs. So the region went up about 10%. We're up to 241. Maryland right now sits at 597. That will go up over 600. Just due to a data processing thing. There are crashes responded to by the Park Police. It's a federal agency, different crash report, long story roundabout. Those are being entered now at the state police headquarters. So that was all very depressing. Started out good, got a little depressing at the end. What are we doing? You guys are all very aware of the things with the measures and targets, putting safety more into the TIP, into the long range plan. We had a lot more safety project scoring in there. I think all of you participated and are aware and very familiar with the state highway efforts as far as their pedestrian safety action plan and their vulnerable road user assessment and all of that work and funding being put and priority being put on those projects in our region. Local strategic highway safety plans. We have 6, we're about to have our 7th, and Safe Streets and Roads for All, there's money going to all of our jurisdictions over the first 2 rounds, be it at the county level or municipal level. So there's a lot going on, and I'll show you a little bit of detail about that in a second. Look Alive campaign, we are still going strong with that. We're about to put in a proposal for the next year to get more funding from the Highway Safety Office. And we're exploring new partners with some of our professional sports teams in the area. We have some safe system approach projects following up from previous years, and we're trying to expand our public engagement when it comes to safety. We have a robust public engagement process anyway with all of our projects, but to try to get out there and just do some safety outreach to folks. One of that is a colleague of mine here, sitting right over there. Charles Baber took the recently publicly released crash database. This is every crash report in the state, all agencies. It's managed by Maryland State Police. Downloaded the data and has put it into a dashboard. The dashboard's built around the common emphasis areas in our local SHSPs. There's also mapping capabilities. There's a way to look at crashes, overlaying some American Community Survey things for vulnerable populations in underserved areas. A lot of different things going on in there. So you'll get this link, and please feel free to use it as much as you want. We are updating it shortly, so it will be all the way through 2022, and it will start with 2018 data. So it has those full 5 years of data in there. And last but not least, here's the Safe Streets and Roads for All awards. I know these are small print, but Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Annapolis, Queen Anne's, Howard, and the town of Sykesville. This is just round 2, amounted to about $15 million coming from the feds. The whole rest of the state amounted to 13. So our region got more than half of the money that came to the state of Maryland from round 2. And we had some big ones in round 1 as well, but just wanted to point that out. So back to the purpose at hand was the resolution with the targets. That seems like it was 30 minutes ago that I brought up. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer. Yes, sir.
Has the number of motorists increased? So percentage wise, crash, you said the fatalities have gone down in the last couple of years. Has the number of motorists increased just to make that stat look even better, or is it kind of flat?
So this is the individual ones. As far as number of motorists, just looking at VMT rates. So our VMT rates went down about 2.3%. So that means our VMT was probably about maintaining. So the fatalities going down brought the rate down a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't have the, it's on the first slide.
So Cindy, I just want to say for the record, VMT, vehicle miles traveled.
Yes, I'm
so
sorry.
that those who, we're good with the acronyms, but.
Yes, sorry, thank you. We haven't looked at things like licensed drivers or registered vehicles, things like that, how that's changed over the years, but looking at the vehicle miles traveled, we can see here, we hit a low in 2020 with the pandemic. There was a lot of stay at home going on. It rebounded in 2021 and it only went up another 100 across the whole region in 2022. So yes, that's kind of maintained. I'm not sure what the 2023 estimate will be, but at least within this 5 years, yes, we have people coming back out in the last 2 years. So seeing them come out since 2020 and our numbers still going down, I think is a positive.
Across the region, each jurisdiction, do you see the highest numbers on our high-speed interstates?
Haven't looked at that.
Okay, I was just wondering, because you had mentioned the 6 fatalities on the Beltway. I'm just wondering, using the 4 E's, if we could target certain alignments with enforcement and safety improvements on those high-speed roadways.
And we certainly can,
Okay.
yes. And that's something I can look into and get back to you.
Okay.
That is a function within the crash data dashboard. We can look at it by road type, look at it by a lot of different things. So, and we can also look and see the difference, which typically there's a difference in the type of crash, you know, speeding on the highways and then non-motorists most likely on local roads. So we can look at those differences for sure.
Yes, you kind of touched on it, but that's what I was gonna ask is, so it's wonderful. I'm so glad to see that our numbers for this year going down, but I would be interested, excuse me, to see those non-motorist serious injuries and fatalities, because that's a big push for the city. So,
Yes.
and if there's any areas we potentially identify as problem areas, and try to direct, just like he was saying, direct some additional focus on those locations. So, but overall, great report. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to you. You guys have received big money from
Yes.
from
Huge effort.
Safe Streets and Roads for all over, what was it, 12 million, I think, the one time, so.
Well, because we previously had 1 million and then we got the 9.9, which is the largest for the country.
Yes,
So, yes.
awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Cindy, can you talk a little bit more about your enhanced public involvement that your enhanced public engagement that you all are looking at doing? Because I personally think that the public engagement and making sure that the public is aware of, you know, the injuries and the fatalities and things such as that, and the education around it, plays a large role. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the things, my position is funded through a grant with the Highway Safety Office. So we have different activities and objectives, things like that. And one of them for the current year, my goal is to identify at least one new group or new population or new area within each of your jurisdictions to build contacts with and add to our network, especially when it comes to safety outreach. Whatever metric it may be, but an underserved or unapproached thus far population. Some of them so far that have come up have been minority populations that have their own Uber network because they don't want to call a bigger one, so they have their own thing and they don't necessarily have car seats in those cars because they're just working together and picking them up and the safety of those drivers. Another one was expectant mothers or new mother groups and talking to them about things beyond just car seat safety because they get a lot of that with that target area, but some other things beyond that, whether it's safe walking or navigating the network or just getting feedback from them. So that's my goal so far this year, is to expand it beyond and just build upon the BMC network. You've probably seen in the Be More Involved, Monica's been a great partner. She's been putting a lot of safety messaging out there in all of those newsletters, and that's a regular thing coming out. And I've also been trying to work with the Highway Safety Office and their program managers to use our region as a pilot in a lot of ways. If there's new ideas to say, let's do it here, let's try and get out to our groups. So don't have dates or anything for you of an event coming up, but that's one of my priorities. So.
Just one thing to mention, of course, this will be the 3rd year that we will be having the Maryland Cycling Classic. And we just recently had a meeting with them, and they're looking at doing more local community activities, projects and things, not really different projects, but more so events and things, potentially even throughout the year. And so they're looking for some additional engagement opportunities, things like that. So that might be an opportunity to get linked up with them as well.
That would be great. That's through the whole
city
region.
and the county, because it, you know, it spans.
Yeah.
So there could be some, I know in the past, even with some school groups, we've done some safe bike riding tips and showing them how to properly signal and turn and maneuver in traffic. So they're just, you know, just thinking about those opportunities with that group and that platform.
Great, thank you. That's a great opportunity. I'd only heard about it as the event, not necessarily doing outreach.
Yeah.
So I will definitely work with your folks to make those connections. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so.
One more question. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Does the state, do the state numbers in that first data slide include data from the Washington metropolitan area?
Yes, that's anybody in Maryland. Mhm.
You good? All right, so now we're going to need to approve the resolution. So I now ask a member to move for approval of the resolution and a second.
Former city motions.
Anyone can second?
Baltimore City, moved and Anne Arundel County second. So we now, at this particular time, we typically ask if there's questions, but we kind of took the questions in advance. So I will ask if there's any public that has any questions or comments on the resolution.
Madam Chair, currently there's no one requesting to speak in the chat box. I'll turn to the audience. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak from the audience? Don't see anyone requesting to speak on this resolution.
All right, so with that, again, I'm gonna ask that the BRTB members turn on your cameras for a vote. So when Rebecca calls your name, please say A or nay for your vote. And Rebecca, can you call the roll?
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County.
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County.
Aye.
Hartford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
and RTA of Central Maryland.
Aye.
Thank you. The resolution has passed. Now we'll go to the next resolution, 2411. Todd, can you introduce the next action item?
Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider resolution 24-11 to endorse the 2020 Census Urban Area Boundary for the Baltimore region. It's Ms. Erin Bolton to introduce the resolution.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just wanted to give a quick background on this. So for urban areas, the Census Bureau delineates urban areas that represent densely developed territory and encompass residential, commercial, and other non-residential urban land uses. And then FHWA requires that those urban areas that have a population of 50,000 or more must be covered by a metropolitan planning organization. So for that, FHWA uses the census definition of urban areas, but then requests state DOTs to create adjusted urban areas. And then the state DOTs are directed to coordinate with local jurisdictions and MPOs to create those. So the sort of overall principles are they should align with they can't be contracted, but they should be expanded to align with existing planning boundaries like towns or counties where appropriate, address irregularities in boundary shape. Some of, especially with this latest 2020 version, some of them are quite detailed around the boundaries. They should maintain consistency with the highway functional classification system. In particular, if minor collectors are changed from urban to rural, they wouldn't be eligible for certain funding under the federal aid highway system. So just to take a look at a comparison here on the map, in the sort of looking kind of pink on this screen area is the adjusted urban area. And if you can see overlaid on top of it are black boundaries. That was the original urban area delineated by the census. And so it's MDOT working with us and also with jurisdictions. It's been expanded in a lot of places to encompass some other areas per the jurisdiction's directions. And so just where we are in this process, DOT already went through that collaborative process, submitted these boundaries to FHWA for review by the end of December. That means the upcoming 2024 HPMS data submission should conform to this approved urban rural boundary distinction as of June of this year. And then the next step flowing from this would be to review functional classification of roadways. That's due in December 2025. So that'll be a 2-year process of re-examining those. And so just for your consideration today, this is the proposed urban area boundary adjustment as prepared by DOT that was submitted to FHWA. And that's what we're considering today. Any questions?
So let me take the resolution under consideration and then we'll go to the questions. So let me ask for a member to move for approval of the resolution in a second, and then we'll open it up for questions. Can I get a motion?
Anyone on motion to approve? Howard, a second.
Anna Ronald, and then Howard second. So we'll open it up for any questions that the members may have. Jason?
Can you kind of give me the distinction between an urban area and an urbanized area? Is there a distinction?
Good question. There's no longer a distinction. So the Census Bureau used to make a distinction between what they called urbanized areas and then urban clusters. And with the 2020 census, they've eliminated that distinction.
Okay.
So the only regulation that applies is that FHWA wants us to include all urban areas of a population of 50,000 or over, which was the former urbanized area.
Follow.
Sure, go ahead, Jesse.
Do you know the I guess, the increase in the geographic area from the previous urban areas versus now,
That is a good, I don't
Yeah,
have
land
that.
area, like how much more did it grow by? the area?
Yes,
Yeah.
good question. I don't have that prepared for you this morning, but I can follow up that.
What is the relationship between the urban area boundary and the PFA? Priority funding there?
They are not, I don't think there's any direct relationship, or I don't know if the urban boundary is considered with the PFA.
So priority funding areas are a state definition and this is a federal definition, so formal.
We're not changing.
Oh, it's no change.
Yeah. We were already all purple.
Yeah, okay. So page 2, it is.
Any other questions from the members?
What is the priority funding area?
Sure. Well, I'll try to speak to this. Heather might be able to help me a little bit better, but in Maryland state law, there was a definition known as priority funding areas. And the idea behind this was that state resources were supposed to be kind of being directed to designated growth areas that each county were to designate specifically. But that is a state law and a state program. It does not relate to this federal program. Is that correct now?
Yeah.
Close enough? Okay.
So as it relates to like functional classification, if you have a road that's not in the priority funding area, but it's designated as maybe an urban collector, how does that, is there any relationship there?
Yeah, so again, this is the definition for federal transportation program. So if it's within these urbanized area boundaries, then it meets that threshold for urban transportation funding at the federal level. PFA is again state level, that doesn't relate to federal transportation eligibility on different roadways.
I think Chris had a question too.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if this results in actual roadways being classified as urban that will become eligible for funding. And if so, where are they? Are they located in one county in particular? Was that a driving factor in expanding the boundary? Is there like a push to seek urban status in order to make these roads eligible? And if so, what is that all about?
I think there's.
Yeah, sure. Again, yeah, the designation as an urban roadway within this class program does make you eligible for more types of federal transportation funding. So it is a benefit to, or at least most people consider it a benefit to be designated as an urbanized roadway and makes it eligible again for more sources.
Right, but the Census Bureau determines the urban boundaries based on population employment. It's not that you can petition to grow your urban area.
Okay.
But it does say the existing and within 20 years, the likely area, I think, but it's based on census data.
That's from FHWA. I mean, they would advise jurisdictions to expand their adjusted urban area boundaries, because that's what the urban rural roadway classification will be based on, to include areas of future growth, you know, that anticipated perhaps within the next 20 years. Also, generally, the census boundaries or the urban boundaries for the 2020 census were contracted a bit in some of the outer reaches due to their new definitions. So I think you can see some evidence up here of where the adjusted boundaries expanded so that roadways wouldn't change classification perhaps. We didn't work with the jurisdictions on that detailed level of selecting where they wanted to expand them. We were just more in the role of advising them, you know, making sure everyone had the opportunity to review and adjust the boundaries.
So Harford County has a large expansion of the urban area. And does that mean that Hartford County was given an opportunity to consider designating this as urban, and they looked to their development plan and saw that they project growth within this area over the next 20 years? So it's reasonable then to request an urban designation?
No.
No.
Short answer, no. It doesn't. I would say it doesn't follow, you know, you look at our land use plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow our land use plan or zoning that's out in the rural area. But, and that was kind of, you know, kind of what I was getting at too. You're right, I mean, we expanded, looks like half the county is really urban, but that really doesn't follow our zoning or land use. If you look at our land use maps, so.
It may be the case that it more closely follows the 2010 boundaries, but I can't, I'm just guessing, looking at it, and that would definitely be a useful thing to share, is how this compares.
So I would say that area, I guess, to the east is, it had been looked at opening up what's considered our development envelope at one point, but it's for a number of reasons been rejected. But it is kind of between a high employment center, which is APG, and then our municipalities, you know, Bel Air being the you know, the kind of the county seat for government and where a lot of the population lives. And if you look at, I guess it's kind of outlined, not the purple, but the black outline, that pretty much was, I guess, the old boundary, urban growth boundary, and it's kind of follows our development envelope more closely than what's on that.
So again, the state did work with each of the counties to kind of work in these areas, so it may have been more to maintain eligibility for federal transportation funding.
And I would also say that the 22 corridor, which touches Bel Air to APG, starts in the envelope, goes outside, ends up back inside, and so, you know, there's I think from our current county executive, a push to kind of make some improvements to that roadway. So, you know, that could have been a reason why.
And that is a directive also from FHWA, is to avoid roads going in and out of rural classification, urban and rural classification if possible. So that may have factored in.
Thank you, Alex. That answers my question. What motivates the designation of these areas?
All right, so any other questions from the members? If not, we'll ask if any member of the public has any questions or comments on the resolution. Todd, in the chat box, do we have anything?
Madam Chair, we do have just a comment from our representative in Maryland Department of Transportation, who provided a link to the final 2020 census area, Stan Janusek. So that is in the chat box, but that is not a question or comment on the resolution.
Okay, great. Again, with cameras on for those who are remote, when Rebecca reads your name, please indicate A or nay. Rebecca?
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County.
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Hartford County,
Aye.
Adams County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
PennDOT,
Aye.
and RTA of Central Maryland.
Aye.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, Todd, you can introduce the next item for us.
Certainly, 1 second while I get up the presentations.
Okay.
Presentations today. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider resolution 2412 to endorse the designation of critical urban freight corridors in the region. I'm now going to ask Mr. Keith Kucharik to introduce the resolution. Keith.
Good morning and thank you. As Todd said, in resolution 24-12, we're asking for approval of recommendations for increased mileage to the critical urban freight corridors. This amendment was presented to the technical committee on January 2nd, and it was recommended to be sent to BRTB as presented. So the National Highway Freight Network was established in 2016 under the FAST Act. The goal was to allocate federal funding sources to highway segments that are crucial to freight movement. The National Highway Freight Network is broken down into 4 subsystems. The primary highway freight system, which is primarily the interstates. There's other interstate sections that are not on the primary highway freight system, and they are essentially critical routes that connect freight facilities. Then there's the critical rural freight corridors, which are rural public roads that connect to the primary highway freight system. It's a lot of connections here. And of course, the critical urban freight corridors, which are urban public roads that connect to the primary highway freight system and other important freight generators. And these are what we're going to be talking about mostly today. So the FAST Act laid out a set of criteria to set a mileage cap in each state. In Maryland, we were allocated 150 miles of critical rural corridors, and only 8 of those were in the Baltimore region. And then there was 75 miles of critical urban freight corridors, and 25 of those were in the Baltimore region. So that's back in 2017, SHA and BMC coordinated together to develop the current list of 25 miles. And that used, they to develop the criteria for developing that 25-mile list. The criteria included things like average annual daily traffic, the percentage of truck traffic on a particular segment of roadway, proximity to freight generators such as warehouses, ports, airports. And then those corridors were weighted based on the proximity to the freight generators. So now the IIJA came along and doubled Maryland's allotment for both the critical rural and the critical urban freight corridors to 300 and 150 miles respectively. That in turn led to an increase in mileage in the Baltimore region. So again, we're talking about the critical urban freight corridors. So our mileage doubled from 25 miles to 50 miles. So with this new legislation, though, we were not required to create an entirely new 50 miles. We could keep the same 25 miles that we had originally, or we could do any combination of coming up with 50 miles. In this case, we chose to stick with the original 25 miles because the criteria that they used back in 2017 was pretty solid. So we opted to stick with the mileage that we had and just develop an additional 25 miles. So SHA partnered with Texas Transportation Institute to identify over 200 miles of eligible roadway segments for the critical urban corridors. Similar criteria they used this time to establish those corridors: average annual daily truck traffic, average annual daily traffic, the percentage of truck traffic on any particular roadway, proximity to freight generators, same pretty much criteria that they used before. And those scores were weighted based on the proximity to those freight generators. BMC looked at those criteria that SHA developed, and we created our own methodology to go along with that. So it's in addition to utilizing the SHA rankings, we had our own way of looking at things. So we identified the segments that fell within the long-range transportation plan, and in many cases, some of these segments fell into more than one project that was in the long-range plan. So we compared those LRTP segments with the MDOT rankings. And then we also looked at whether the eligible segments connected to some of the existing critical urban freight corridors that were previously identified. And then we just looked at things from a logical standpoint. Did it make sense? There were some segments that were like 0.01 miles, and does it really make sense to have a corridor of 0.01 miles? Probably not. So we kind of looked at it from a logical standpoint as well. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that we utilized the 25 miles. We maximized our 25 miles that we were given. So we took that into consideration as well. This is just kind of an example of some of the criteria or the eligible segments that were given to us by SHA. And they were scattered all over the region. So there's a higher density of these corridors were in the Baltimore City area, but they were scattered all over Carroll County, Queen Anne's County and everything. So there was a good cross section of possible segments. So we looked at taking into consideration all that criteria. We came up with a list of projects or segments of the roadway. A lot of them are US 50. There's 4 of them along US 50, and we wanted to make sure that we maintain some sort of connectivity. So there's some parts of US 50 on each side of the bridge, but we wanted to continue that section all the way through, make it a longer segment. As you can see on this slide, if you add up all of our mileage, we came pretty close to the 25 miles that we were allotted. We ended up with 24.81 miles. This slide just shows how what we came up with here at BMC compares to the SHA scoring system. So the SHA scoring system ranged anywhere from 1.5 to 55 being the worst. And you can see the worst or the lowest criteria that we had was a 4.5 on the SHA scoring. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about. So we're asking for your recommendation or your approval on the segments that we have listed that we're recommending for inclusion in the critical urban freight corridors.
Thank you, Keith. I'm gonna ask for a member to move for approval of this resolution and then a second, and then we'll open it up for questions. So can I have a member to move for approval?
Motion.
Hartford County motion for approval. Can I get a
Second.
MDOT second? Does any of our BRTB members have any questions?
I do. So just curious, and forgive me because I haven't necessarily looked at this in depth previously, but under the recommendations, were there areas within Baltimore City that were recommended, and maybe are there certain locations that are already included and maybe they're already accounted for? So I'm just trying to understand.
So there was a lot of the initial 25 that were in Baltimore City. The port area has quite a few. This latest round, the segments that were included in Baltimore City, and I discussed this briefly, that they were like 0.01, 0.05. There was very small, tiny segments that didn't really connect to anything. They didn't connect to any of the existing corridors. They didn't, they're there for a reason because there's trucks on the roads, obviously, but it didn't really make sense to include something that small where the entire roadway wouldn't have been considered, just that very tiny portion of it. So that we did look at that, and we didn't think it was very feasible to just include like a 0.01 mile segment. Does that answer? Maybe.
It does. I'm still just trying to process kind of like how it wouldn't connect to something like, so that's what I'm just trying to visualize, knowing the port, knowing the interstates and, you know.
Would
some of those
it be, do you have an example, like, that would be helpful? Is there like
Yeah.
a facility that's at the end of a, or
Don't have one off
a
the top of my
distribution
head,
center,
but
it's just not.
Yeah, like, it's just disappear, so I'm like, that's a connect, okay.
well, I think part of it is that there may have been a generator. And then those trucks disperse into different areas, so once they start to disperse, that criteria gets lost.
Okay.
So it may have met the threshold of truck percentage in this very small segment. Once they start moving out into different directions, then that road doesn't become eligible anymore. So I think that's a good portion of it is that in the city, things just disperse a lot quicker.
Understood, okay, get my phone now, thank you.
Any other members have questions?
I do.
Yeah, there's Chris.
Thank you. So what is the implication of classifying Maryland to College Parkway to 648 as a freight corridor?
But it was,
Technically speaking,
it's just based off the criteria,
The implication is, if there is an improvement slated for that roadway, there are certain federal funds that will become eligible because it is considered a critical urban freight corridor. So it's a little bit of cachet, it's another fund source to tap. And that's why we looked at the long-range transportation plan of the projects that were eligible, you know, how did they score, but are they likely to have an improvement? So we wanted to take projects that were likely to come up for improvement as a possible fund source.
does this facilitate more truck traffic?
no, it shouldn't. And this additional funding doesn't preclude other types of funding, so it's really funding on top of funding that's already available, so you kind of get the double dip on this if it's included in a freight corridor.
Does the funding tied to freight corridors imply that eligible only for improvements related to truck travel? I mean, if there are specific elements of the transportation system that are just related to truck turning radiuses and things like that, does this make it eligible for that type of funding?
So yeah, you would have to make a case that the improvements that you want to use this funding for will have a benefit to truck traffic, yes.
And so what would be an example of a truck traffic?
But you mentioned one yourself, like the turning radius or something like that, if there's a lot of crashes as a result of trucks having to make wide turns or whatever, that would be a good example. Truck parking, I think, falls into this funding source. So there's, you know, you could get funding for truck parking that would take trucks off of where they're parked illegally on a ramp or on the shoulder or something like that. If you were able to use this funding, you could, that's a safety
So the
improvement.
funding could be used to effectively make it easier for trucks to travel on that facility, increasing the amount of truck traffic.
I mean,
Usually this designation is following where truck traffic is, where these freight connectors are. I don't know that it leads to more.
So we
I mean,
talked about
these-
this
These are
yesterday.
already designated, like the port or the food center. Is Anne Arundel County, the food center?
Yeah, so what Regina's trying to say is the trucks are already there because there's already a freight generator there. I don't know that it's gonna make them generate more trucks because they're already coming from a specific location or going to a specific location. So unless the business expands or something like that, then it shouldn't create more traffic, but it makes it easier for the traffic that is there to get through or safer.
Suspect in this case that trucks are being diverted through too because 97 has become so unpredictable. And do we
Possible
wanna
that they
facilitate that?
do detour to avoid, I mean, a lot of trucks detour to avoid tolls, they'll detour, or they'll take different routes to avoid congestion, but yeah, so if we solve some sort of problem that helps congestion, then they could come back to their original route, in theory, yes.
think most likely benefit of this is it makes the folks at SHA who are programming the federal dollars an easier job, and they have multiple sources to program against a significant project that a jurisdiction like Anne Arundel might be requesting for route improvements. To me, that's probably what this is really helpful for, as much as anything, but just.
Sam, do you have a perspective on this particular project, this designation?
Are you trying to get me to give a certain perspective? I have reservations about it, actually. You've asked questions around it to try to have staff perhaps insinuate it would increase traffic. But I think they've explained that that's not what the purpose of the designation is for. I think we need to trust staff expertise and not assume that there might be a local perspective on the designation that's counter to it. So I'm trusting the staff's expertise on what they believe the designation stands for. I know in that particular area, we have a parallel bikeway, pedestrian way that's fairly wide, planned in parallel, and this designation wouldn't impact that. So we definitely have a parallel pedestrian route along the roadway, but it's not as if it's increasing the speed of the roadway. You know, there's a set speed limit. The designation doesn't increase the speed. Most of the issues we have on that alignment are local residents' speed issues, and it causes congestion because they speed between the intersections and then get jammed up along College Parkway because they're going too fast. Even though the speed is set lower, they're going 60 to 70 miles an hour on a 40-mile-an-hour roadway, and we've really tried to do enforcement along that corridor because of the challenge, and we emphasize that you know, people should abide by the speed on that roadway in order to make it safer for pedestrians, because we are building a parallel bike path along the alignment. I don't think the designation gives function. It's already functioning as a freight alternative, and the designation doesn't affect how Waze tells a truck to go to avoid traffic. That's something we can't do at the federal level. It's a private map, as is Google Maps. So I know that's a lot in an explanation, but I just didn't want it to come off as, you know, I was countering staff. I trust staff's advice on this and the designation. I don't think the designation is creating a functional freight road. I think it's functioning as a freight corridor because it is an option for trucks to go along that alignment. And based on my understanding, we cannot prohibit truck traffic because that is not a county, you know, operated roadway. And I'll defer to Heather on that. It's a state roadway, so it's not within our power as a county to prohibit trucks from going along that alignment.
Just a staff perspective, this is just additional eligibility for these different types of roadways. I have to say it's not a large amount of money on a regular basis, so I don't think this is kind of a make or break for individual segments in terms of improvements, but it is just an additional eligibility.
All right, we'll move on to allow the public any comments. Todd, can you check the chat box and see if we have
Certainly.
any?
Madam Chair, currently there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box, but we do have some people requesting to speak in the audience. Please come up and state your name so for the minutes and items, please. We do ask members of the public to limit their speaking to 3 minutes for individuals if possible. Okay, thank you.
Brennan Murray, just a general question, and forgive if this is out of potentially ignorance, but for Baltimore City, the local truck routes, the routes that are not highways or state routes, are those already considered under this provision? And if not, were they added to this provision to help with the maintenance on those roads?
Sure. So it's a question for staff. So again, going back to the methodology for how these were identified. These were identified working with Maryland State Highway Administration and local jurisdictions and the MPOs in trying to identify these individual segments. And these eligibility items were done on a statewide level. So we do and are looking towards our members to try to make sure that some of their segments, could be included on those, but there is a methodology for kind of prioritizing each of those. So some of those local segments that you see in Baltimore City's program may be important to the city, but they may not have the criteria that was identified here to kind of raise up to the level of the recommendation. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Any other questions from the audience? Currently, there's no one requesting to speak in the chat box, Madam Chair.
All right, hearing no other questions, we'll take a vote. Rebecca, can you call the roll, please?
Annapolis. Aye. Anne Arundel County.
Aye.
Baltimore City. Aye. Baltimore County.
Aye.
Carroll County. Aye. Hartford County.
Aye.
Howard County.
Aye.
Queen Anne's County.
Aye.
MDOT.
Aye.
And RTA of Central Maryland.
Aye.
All right, the resolution has passed. We'll go to our next resolution, which is 24-13. Todd?
Thank you. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider resolution 24-13 for a request from Anne Arundel County to change the functional classification for several US 50 service roads. Mr. Darren Bean of Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration is now going to present this request.
Good morning, everyone. I'm from State Highways Regional Intermodal Planning Division, and I'll be going over the proposed functional classification change for the service roads along US 50 Blue Star Memorial Highway. So currently they are classified as local roads, and we are proposing to reclassify them as minor collectors, specifically segments of MD 908 and MD 931. There are 4 segments along MD 908 that we are considering. Segment A, which is from Blue Star Memorial Highway to St. Margaret's Road. Segment B, from East College Parkway to Oceanic Drive. There are 2 sections of segment C, the first being from St. Margaret's Road to Skidmore Drive, and the second is from Whitehall Road to Oceanic Drive. And for segment D of MD 908, is from Skidmore Drive to East College Parkway. And the 2 segments for 931, the first being R, which is from East College Parkway to College Parkway, and Q is from East College Parkway to Cape St. Clair Road. So this is a location reference map of the service roads in Annapolis, Maryland. Service roads are highlighted in the blue dotted lines. And in Federal Highways Functional Classification Manual, in general, local roads should provide direct access to land, mainly residential areas. They should direct traffic to other roads such as arterials, and they should discourage through traffic, whereas minor collectors should provide access to both commercial and residential areas, distribute traffic between local roads and other roads such as arterials. And currently, the service roads along US 50, they provide both residential and commercial access, as well as access to US 50, which is a principal arterial, and St. Margaret's Road, which is a major collector. So currently, the service roads are operating more as not major collectors, some minor collectors, and not as local roads. In the process for updating the functional classification of the roads, we've coordinated with Anne Arundel County. This was presented to BRTB's technical committee on January 2nd. And the next step is to provide a package for Federal Highways concurrence. And after Federal Highway reviews the package, State Highways Data Services Division would update the functional classification of service roads in their roadway network system.
So I'm gonna ask for approval of the resolution and then we'll open it up for questions. So can I have a member to approve the resolution? And a second? I'll approve. Baltimore County, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second, Baltimore City. Now, we'll take any questions from any members.
More of a comment, we wrote a letter for support for this because we know that that particular alignment functions as a system and reclassification based on actual behavior is vital for SHA to manage it as a system and create better traffic flow and safer traffic flow in the area.
Any other questions? No? Okay, any questions from the public in the chat box? Todd, or in the audience?
Madam Chair, currently there's no one requesting to speak in the chat box, and I look to the audience, and there is no questions from the audience.
Sounds good. We'll take the roll. When Rebecca calls your name, please indicate A or nay. Rebecca?
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Harford County, Howard County,
Aye.
Queen County,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
RTA Central Maryland.
Aye.
And the resolution passes. So we've completed our resolutions for today. We'll go to our informational items. Don will brief us on the newly formed Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. Don?
Good morning.
Morning.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And go Ravens. I'm here today to talk about the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. And we have two commissioners with us today, Chair Walker and Member Gartner.
Sam
too? No.
Oh, okay.
No, just the two. We have a former commissioner.
How much I read my email.
We also have a former commissioner, Bruce Gardner, who is moving on. So
Soon to be.
we haven't even started yet and we're already kind of cycling through. But thank you for your time here this morning. So a little bit about the commission, 16 members, 6 from Baltimore City, 3 of those were appointed by the governor, 3 were appointed by the mayor, 4 from Baltimore County, 2 governor, 2 county executive, 2 members from Anne Arundel County, 1 governor, 1 county executive, 2 members from Howard County, 1 county executive, 1 governor. We have the secretary designee, and we have the local ATU union, who is a non-voting member. Their duties really are, key duties really are up here today. Sorry about the lengthy text on the graphic here. But basically, they're to look at the MTA's long-term needs, and they're found in their capital needs inventory. Look at long-term plans found in the Central Maryland Transit Plan. Review and advise MTA on their annual operating and capital budget request to MDOT. Look at their performance in their annual attainment report, the big 4. They also want to coordinate MTA system with the locally operated transit systems. They are providing advice and input to MTA generally, and being an advocate for transit across the region.
by way of background, I think many of you know this, many of you were participating in this. The Baltimore region is one of the only largest metropolitan area in the nation without a transit board that oversees their transit agencies, principal transit agency. There was an acknowledgement that local stakeholders lacked influence in the process. And there were repeated efforts in the General Assembly to try to create an authority to change these things. So back in July of 22, the appointed work group by the Baltimore Metropolitan Council did a study to follow up on some recommendations that we had made, this board had made. That was picked up by the General Assembly and created the commission as a means to begin to address those issues. So we're meeting on February 2nd. That's our first meeting, 10 a.m. here. Their attention is going to be really on electing a chairman, organizing group to run the meetings and to kind of begin to dive into these issues. They're going to look at issues facing the region, particularly looking at MTA and the lots as I described, and understand how the providers works and what their challenges and what their issues are. They'll need to organize themselves, as I mentioned. They got to create bylaws, and they'll hear from stakeholders and the public. Over the first year, we expect them to organize. We expect them to educate themselves on the understanding transit in the region, to examine the resources available to MTA and the lot systems, to examine the performance of MTA, to look at their key plans and programs, and to begin to identify the critical issues facing the region. So the work really is going to begin a week from Friday. We're looking forward to it here. It's the next step in a long conversation that's been going on. So I'm happy to take any questions from anybody.
Any questions for Don on the commission?
Can members who are not in this commission listen in on these meetings?
Yeah, there'll be public meetings. They'll be streamed and the room will be open.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. You hired all the staff or? Yeah, we've hired 2 staff members. One of them is here, Jake Shutt, and the other is out front, Ashley Roach. And will this commission facilitate MOUs, operating MOUs, or is that still a function of the Central Maryland RTA? Are those things that'll be? They're not an operator, so the BRTC will not be an operator. It'll be a little confusing with the acronyms, but the BRTB and now the BRTC, but they're not an operator, so they won't be. They may want to talk about issues that you're facing. So more of advisory. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, and our next agenda item is Heather Murphy is going to give us a high-level overview of the revised final CTP.
Yes, all right, so I'm gonna speak from here if you guys are okay. Talk loud. We did release our final CTP last Wednesday. There is a lot of talk around this CTP. This is definitely a CTP that has the stamp of the Moore Miller administration, which was a concern, I think, on some people's part before. A lot of ups and downs between what was funded before and what is funded now. The end result is we have a 6-year, $20.2 billion program. I think the key of that is we still have $20.2 billion planned over the next 6 years. Said there was a lot of ups and downs. Some of the key things in the Baltimore area that I'd want to focus on that was added was there is a commitment for $450 million for the Frederick Douglass Tunnel. That is the state's commitment to Amtrak's brand new tunnel under Baltimore City. That was a huge grant that Amtrak received from the federal government for the Northeast Corridor, and that is our share as the MARC system goes through that tunnel. If people remember all the way back to last final, there was $98 million added to the program for the Red Line. It's moving very fast, but you know, we need to understand that there's a lot of money that's been put into that project so far to get us through that planning and early engineering. There was some additional funding to match some Corps of Engineers for dredging at Mid-Bay. That was almost $100 million. So definitely some actual construction and planning dollars added there. The other thing that we are looking at is taking a look at a new light rail fleet. Everybody is well aware of our issues right now. The fleet really is at a point in its useful life that it needs to be replaced in its entirety. So we are looking at new low floor fleet there that will be done in concert with the Red Line if the Red Line chooses to go with the light rail versus a bus rapid transit. There's also some additional money for some cost overruns at Howard Street Tunnel. Again, another big federal grant. So there is still a lot going on in the Baltimore region. And there is still, you know, a lot to be done. It is not where we want to be in terms of where we did have to do some moving around. Predominantly that was at State Highway with a lot of reductions in the highway plans. I know people are not particularly happy with that, but I think the big emphasis that we want to make is that we did not remove any planning or design money for any of those major projects. They are still on schedule. If we get to a point where we get additional revenue, we will be able to keep those on schedule. So that is obviously a large discussion going on in the legislature in these next couple of years so that we can keep those projects moving. And that's kind of my high level. We really emphasized keeping projects moving that were already in construction, keeping our commitment to any kind of federal grant. There's as everybody knows, a huge amount of discretionary grants, everything, including the airport, the port, as well as our standard state highway and MTA grants. We have kept the funding in those projects so that we can keep those things moving and keep the federal money coming in. And we did have to make some trims where we weren't happy in state of good repair, but nothing on any critical safety projects. It'll just be, you know, a little delay in some of the projects that we were planning on moving forward earlier will just be delayed a bit. That's kind of my real big high level overview. I'm perfectly willing to take questions.
Any questions from the members?
More of a comment. I want to thank you for continuing the P&E on all the key projects we have in our county, like 97, 23, 214, 175. There are a number of them we check in on with your staff every month. And then we also appreciate the 1-year loss infusion. And we share the same hopes with you that new funding will come for the remaining years as well. And I know that gives us more time for legislators to make decisions on how that will happen. So we appreciate that.
Appreciate that. And I think I emphasize that in the past, we have really cut back on the planning and engineering. Those are easy dollars. There's no commitment. But that leaves you when you do get revenue with nothing on the shelf to actually build. So that was definitely one of the big emphasis of this administration. And I did fail to mention that one of the big differences between what was released in December as an overview and where we ended up was $150 million that the governor put back into our original plan. Most of that was on local impacts. The highway user revenue and lots are now not impacted at all for fiscal '25. There was some other operating budget and a little bit of money for MTA, state of good repair, that was put back into the budget at the last minute. Just to make my job easier.
Or beyond the last minute, it
Oh, it
sounded
was,
like.
you know, you talk about the 13th hour, you know, this was the 14th hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the CTP did not get posted at 1 o'clock like planned, but it was posted on the 7th.
Well, we can appreciate the hard work that has gone into revising the CTP and the hard decisions that had to be made. And I will say that I commend MDOT for not taking out the planning money, because that does set us up for future opportunities to go for some other type of funding. We know that it was hard. We as a region probably have given you all a hard time, but we understand it was a hard decision to make. Yeah, so, thank you, Heather. So Todd, I think that we have one more thing on here for you to talk about, the carbon reduction program funds.
Yes, Madam Chair, under other business, we wanted to at least alert the members that staff have had discussions with the Maryland Department of Transportation regarding the new IIJA program known as carbon reduction funds. This is about $4.5 million that should be spent in the Baltimore region on projects that reduce carbon emissions and transportation programs. We've been talking about it as a technical committee and board for about 2 years now. The state is coming up with a program that it looks like is going to be similar to the TAP program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, where local jurisdictions and potentially other partners, municipalities and what we understand might be nonprofit groups could even apply into this program. There would be a prioritization methodology that then the MPOs could undertake to kind of put forward the priorities of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board in each of these areas. And then hopefully, those priorities would be followed. We understand that, we're going to get a little bit more details, hopefully this Friday, at what's known as the MPO roundtable that we have on a quarterly basis with Maryland Department of Transportation. And then the state hopes to release what they are calling an intent to apply application, supposedly February 1st. We are still awaiting kind of details of the formal program, but they would like to get it out on the street as quickly as possible. And then after about a month of this process of people putting in an intent to apply application, then there would be about a 2-month period for kind of review and prioritization of the different types of applications. So we don't have an awful lot of details, but the state is working with staff to try to get this funding out the door. And it's our understanding that even though there was some discussion about, the state having to kind of repurpose some of this funding to utilize the August redistribution this past year, that the program would be made whole, so that hopefully fiscal years 22, 23 and onward would be available not only to the Baltimore region, but there is specific money available to the Bel Air urbanized area, and then also to Westminster, at least for the few years that they are remaining an urbanized area underneath the current definitions. So again, we will learn more details this Friday. We will try to send out as much information as we can, but we appreciate the state kind of working with us in this process, and we want to notify you to start thinking of potential projects that you could apply for these types of funds. It's our understanding the state would like to have kind of, I hate to say shovel ready, but projects that could be obligated in a quick fashion. And I think in the past, we had talked about potentially utilizing these funds for some of our lot services underneath some of the existing MTA contracts to make them go a little bit quicker. This is, again, we got this information yesterday, so we're trying to spread the information out, and we will try to notify you as quickly as possible.
Oh, we
Any
appreciate them.
questions?
I was about to say, we appreciate them reconsidering and giving us the opportunity to go for those funds, and the more information that you have, the quicker will be helpful for the jurisdiction so that we can prepare to try to apply for those funds. So any questions, comments from the members?
Is it planning money or construction money?
So this would be construction money. So again, eligibility could include transit projects, like PED projects, but again, we want to make sure that those projects can be, you know, designed, engineered, and get out for construction, you know, within the required timelines, you know, for lapsing of those funds.
Rolling stock would be ineligible, buses would be ineligible.
It's our understanding, yes. Public transportation projects are eligible.
I mean, the idea is carbon reduction, so, you know, it needs to be projects that can show that you're reducing the carbon emissions. And it needs to be something that can be done short term rather than, we'll plan it for 2 years and design it for another 3 years, and all of a sudden the money is no longer there.
With that, we also, Madam Chair, we would like to recognize one of our outgoing members here. I think Don kind of alluded to this, but our member Bruce Gardner has been designated as the new Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority. We want to thank him for his service to the BRTB, and he's not going very far, so we wish him well, and we'll be working with him in his new capacity. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And just to kind of add to that, I look forward to, you know, being a continued partner with you all and sitting back on the same side of the fence as others. But I am going back to MDTA. For those of you that might not have known me more than 9 years, I spent a stint at MDTA about 10 years ago. So this is returning home to me. Also spent a stint there in the 2004 to 7 timeframe. So know a lot of the people there, looking forward to working with them. Some of my friends and colleagues have been surprised that I'm going back to a highway agency after enjoying all the pathways and pedestrian and transit projects that I've been working on. But you know, it was an interesting experience sitting through the train commission discussions this fall, and all of the discussion of you know, what needs to happen at MDOT and how we need to prepare for the future on the funding side. And I think the MDTA can be a part of that. We need to do it in a responsible way and work closely with the legislature. And there's lots of different ideas out there about that. So looking forward to the challenge. Yes, I am crazy for doing this, but it's a good crazy, hopefully.
It's a good crazy. We were wondering if you fell and bumped your head, but.
With that, staff has no other items other than to echo our thanks for Alex.
Alex?
Yeah, so we want to thank Alex Rawls for serving for way too long on the interagency consultation group. Actually, 5 years, he's done great service to us, but Brian Allwork is going to take over, so thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, to close the meeting.
All right, so if there's no other business to come before the board, I will call a vote to close the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. The next meeting of the BRTB will be held virtually on February 27th. Thank you all and be safe out there.